For having me today. It's a pleasure to be in front of you. This has been a citizen-driven process. I see my good friend Paul Jones has been on the committee. Paul Bergen. Looking around, I don't see any other members of the Citizens Committee, but what is before you has been citizen-driven and citizen-directed. We have had experts outside of this community hired by the school district to help us in that process, but every single school has been looked at by our Citizens Committee. And I can tell you without a doubt we have tremendous needs. And we have a tremendous obligation. We have 32 schools. Many of them are in complete disrepair, not because they weren't taken care of, but because we, the voters, didn't give the school district the proper amount of money to continue to update and renovate the schools. We've had a track record of over 50 years of only passing 5 bonds for a grand total of $74 million, and you've got $1 billion school district, $1 billion, well in excess of $1 billion. So if you can put that in perspective, if you had a $100,000 house and you'd only spend every year $100 on maintenance and refitting it and retooling it, after 50 years, what kind of house would you have? For our city, for our future, for our own property values, for an educated workforce, because we're really teetering on the edge of losing our city. If we don't grow this city, we will fast be in a situation where we're no longer a medium-sized city, no longer over 100,000 people residing here, and we'll lose millions and millions of federal dollars and the prestige of being the cornerstone and the economic hub of all of Southeast Texas. Now, you can have an opinion on a lot of things, but I don't think anyone could possibly have the opinion that these schools are not broken and don't need to be fixed. So there's really 3 decisions to make. The right decision is usually the best decision. The wrong decision is usually the second best decision. No decision is the worst decision. And we've been making no decision for a long, long time, and it's time for us to make a decision to fix the schools. It's going to be expensive. We can afford it. We have a window of opportunity right now that's historic. When we move over, I'll have some PowerPoint slides which will talk to you about the economics and the numbers. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there and let Tom Neal give you his remarks.
And first I want to start off by saying actually how much I appreciate the doctor and his, the whole group of citizens that work tireless and endless in putting together this bond proposal. I want you to clearly understand, because I objected and I'm voicing my opinion, does not mean in any way, form, or fashion that I disrespect or not value the opinion of what has been presented. That's what's great about this country, that we have this opportunity where we can get up and have this kind of forum and speak our views and our opinions. And so again, I want to start off by saying thank you for that. I have been actively involved with the school system, my wife and I, for several years now. We fought long and hard for the return to neighborhood schools back several years ago. And one of the primary issues that we're having problems with supporting this bond issue, I feel that it takes 6 schools out of the neighborhood. I know they're going to be consolidated and moved possibly to some locations. Those locations have not been determined, but there will be 6 schools that will be relocated. So that's one that I have a problem with, taking the neighborhood, the schools out of the neighborhood. The other issues that I spoke to several folks is just the sheer size of this bond issue. It goes back to when 3DI originally did the first phase assessment. We had a committee that reviewed that, looked through it, found several problems, several errors. But we sat down and we had an open public forum with 3DI at the ISD administration building, in which a lot of those were adjusted and reworked. The committee that myself, Richard Guzman, Cena Najad, Sonny Sherman, Lonnie Arrington, and a few others that were appointed by the chamber, met with 3DI and came up with a review after 18 months worth of meetings and studies. And that, out of that, the request was that the district do a demographic study as well as enter into a phase 2 study with 3DI. To our surprise, in the phase 2 study, which we were explaining would be a room by room study of the buildings. There would be architects, engineers, structural engineers that would actually go in and look at each facility. We received the report back, and basically that study is a duplicate almost of the first study. So you clearly understand that their study is based off of just the age of the building. It has nothing to do with how well it's maintained or the structural integrity of the building. So if a building reaches a certain age, you tear it down because it's more costly to repair it, which I totally disagree with, because if you have a facility that has been well maintained over the years, and just because of the age of it, that does not justify tearing it down. Prime example is that we have the South Park, the old South Park High School. I know a decision has not finally been made on that, whether it is taken down or rebuilt. That is a historic building in that community. And it might not be important to some of us, or some, but for those of us that value older buildings and restorations, it is. There has been an engineer study, a professional registered engineer looked at it. Structurally, it's sound. It does need a lot of tender, loving care and cosmetic work done on it. But the problem that I have with this whole report is that new is not always better and does not justify the expense of tearing it down and relocating it. I'm like the doctor. I'm not going to sit up here and ramble and go on and on, but we are having a meeting next Thursday night at the R.C. Miller Library at 6 o'clock. It's not any organized group or anything like that, but I have spoken to several people that have a concern in opposition to this for whatever reason, whether they feel it's too large, whether they don't believe that a football stadium should be built, or whatever the issue is. And those folks need to have a place to come and air their opinions and have a discussion. I've had a lot of communication with Dr. Tischer. In fact, he has another obligation that night, but I have called, or he's going to try to get there as soon as he can if he's still going to be able to. I sent a personal note to the school board president, Reverend Otis Whitaker, inviting him personally to attend this meeting, to be able to get up and publicly answer